Received a message on self-learning Kung Fu, and he's asking for some advice. I'm going to read through the message and offer my feedback. It says, huge greetings, Master Lee. I saw a video on YouTube once of yourself calling out a YouTuber, and I see your concerns with individuals like him. I'm asking for your advice in learning Kung Fu, primarily Wing Chun at the moment. I had a summer of revelations regarding knowing how an enemy can infiltrate us and try to take us down. I watched a few old films and a Bruce Lee life story film in addition to IP Man movies. I feel Kung Fu is calling me more than any other styles, as I feel it suits my ethos as a thinker or reflector. I'm self-taught in languages such as Punjabi and Hebrew. I later did a degree module in Hebrew. Some say I have a gift for languages. In relation to this, the many schools of Wing Chun seem to just be money machines around me. I tend to learn not only an art but a language which I feel is vital to understand the essence behind the subject being learned. I just wanted you to say I have little money and a hunger to learn. Can I pick this up quick, or will I need a sifu? I want a Chinese sifu, not a Western one, as I feel it will be authentic. Please advise in your great capacity. Many blessings. Alright, so I say learn from the Chinese people, learn from the Chinese culture, learn from the Chinese teachers. It's a way of life. It's not going to be something that you can pick up quick. It's a lifelong study. Just imagine being adopted by a Chinese father and then him raising you from an infant until adulthood, or not just until adulthood, but until, him raising you for your entire life. The way that he teaches you as a father is what you'd be learning as far as that culture is concerned. So it's not something that just happens quick. It's the inner essence of a human and their expression. So I might liken it to maybe a Westerner who's non-Chinese, who might have been brought up with certain religious backgrounds, maybe Christian or Catholic or whatever. They were born into that, and then they are taught the values of that for their entire lives until they decide to maybe break off from that and go towards another route. But I think there's a lot that you can learn, not just on YouTube. There's a lot of books out there, but learning from books, learning from YouTube. But like I said, let the Chinese speak for themselves. So if you got a Chinese person who could speak English, then learn from him and whatever he's teaching. It might not always be about combat. It might be, how to cook good food. It might be, how to save money. It might be about medical advice, acupuncture, massage. It could be about playing a musical instrument, the lion drum. It could be about the Chinese language, the Chinese philosophy, just their outlook on life. So you learn whatever you can from a Chinese person and retain that. As far as learning Wing Chun, I don't believe that you could learn authentic Wing Chun because it's passed away. The founder of that art has passed away hundreds of years ago, and whatever you learn, no matter if it's from a Chinese person or from a non-Chinese person, is not going to be authentic. It's going to be an extremely watered down version of whatever that they say it is, but it would be more rightful for them to just change the label. But that in itself is going to be watered down no matter where you're learning from. So, but when you learn martial arts from a Chinese person, they're going to have a different approach because of their innate personality and characters and behaviors and just how they are, their upbringing, and the way that they see things and the way that they see the world, they're going to approach the teachings differently. Okay? Learn from the Chinese philosophies, Buddha, the teachings of Buddha, the teachings of Tao. And if you can learn the Chinese language, that would be ideal. Learn how to read it, learn how to write it, learn how to speak it, learn the entire language. And then if you can even pick up books that are written in Chinese and actually read it, then you're getting closer to something that's authentic. If you can go visit China, go ahead and visit China and learn from there. Whatever you learn in movies, there's a lot that could be learned from Chinese actors. Bruce Lee, Jet Li, Brandon Lee, Jackie Chan, Donnie Yen, Chow Yun-fat, and all those movies created from China. You could watch the movies that are written in Chinese or spoken in Chinese and try to read the subtitles. So learn as much as you can from the culture, from its people. But what I say is, if you ever have the urge to teach, to rather not teach it yourself because you're not a Chinese person, but to direct the people that have that interest towards the sources of where you learned it from the Chinese sources. So, meaning, okay, I've learned a lot from Bruce Lee's Jeet Kune Do, his books, his movies, but I'm not going to say that I teach Jeet Kune Do, but I'm going to direct people towards the sources, direct the people towards his books and his movies. I don't need to stand in between as the middleman, acting as if I know what I'm teaching when I didn't create that. So, as a learner, it's appreciated. Chinese people, they benefit from having students that learn, but they don't benefit from people who exploit and when it comes to cultural appropriation and things like that, that's not beneficial to the Chinese people. So meaning, if a bunch of non-Chinese people are trying to teach about the Chinese culture, then it's not benefiting the Chinese people. But if Chinese people are making a living and profiting and sharing things about their own culture, then that's where they benefit. And that's when the students are actually helping to enhance and spread the Chinese ways and teachings, opposed to corrupting it and misinforming people and things like that. So if you encounter a Chinese person that practices martial arts, no matter what he calls it, no matter if he calls it eagle claw, monkey, dragon, tiger, Hung Gar, Chole Phut, Wing Chun, Tai Chi, no matter what he calls it, don't look at it and be stuck on the label. Just look at it as, hey, there's a Chinese person that practices martial arts. What does he know that he could teach me about his expression of the martial arts? Don't get too confined in the labels and misguided. Because the person who's teaching himself may have a misunderstanding himself. And he may be saying, hey, I'm teaching you Wing Chun, but then in actuality it's not really Wing Chun, it's just his own expression of martial arts that might have been inspired by some of the movements or techniques or ways of Wing Chun, but it's not actually Wing Chun. But whatever he's expressing is just a shadow of that expression. And you can learn from that shadow. But don't be misguided and misinformed and have a misunderstanding that you are actually learning Wing Chun. That's almost like saying Bruce Lee was teaching and expressing Wing Chun. No, he wasn't. He had his own expression, his own way. And he eventually ended up creating his own label to express his way, his ideas. And that's what we need to do, is to stay authentic to who we are. The fact of the matter is, Bruce Lee was Chinese, but he was actually Chinese American, so his expression was going to be very different than the traditional Wing Chun expression. There are some people out there that might practice the traditional Wing Chun style, and they've been doing it for 30 years. And they clearly may have a lot to teach when it comes to whatever they are expressing, whatever traditional style they're expressing. But what I'm saying is that the label in itself is wrong. It's not the right label. They are a Chinese person that may not be well known, with a name that we may not understand too well. And they have their own expression of martial arts that's not Bruce Lee, that's not Yip Man, that's not Wing Chun, that's not anybody of whom we know, but they are legitimately a Chinese person that has some ideas to share about the martial arts, and it can have something of great value. But the label in itself is not the correct label, and they may not understand that, and they could still be using the same label, of which is not the proper label. So there can be a lot learned from Chinese people, and don't limit yourself to just the martial arts or just the combative element. Learn about the culture in its entirety. And it's not something that can be quickly learned. Just like for me, I was born in Chicago, lived in the US for my entire life, but do I know this culture in its entirety? No, I don't. There's still a lot that I'm learning. My language and my vocabulary, I've been speaking English pretty much my whole life, but do I know the entire language? No, I don't. Do I still make mistakes when I speak? Do I still make mistakes when I read and I write? Yes, I do. I haven't mastered the language. I haven't mastered this culture, and I'll be living and learning about this American culture for my entire life. So it's the same thing with Americans that want to learn about the Chinese culture. It's a lifelong study. It's not something you just learn and then all of a sudden, okay, now on to the next thing. If you do think in that way, then whatever you think that you're learning is not going to be of much quality, because you haven't put in the time into really getting into really becoming a part of the culture. So that's what I see. There's a lot of countries out there, a lot of cultures, a lot of things to learn, and we have to decide for ourselves what it is that we truly have interest in learning, and then put our energies into that, and not to think that we could just learn an overabundance of expressions and then all of a sudden try to claim it as our own. Each culture, each country deserves much more than that, and in order for people to respect your studies, you need to put in the time. So if you have been studying the Chinese culture seriously, for 20, 30, 40 years, that shows something. Rather than just saying, hey, I studied the Chinese culture for about 5 months, and then I studied the Japanese culture for about 3 months, and I studied the Thai culture for about 8 months. It just shows kind of like you're not really certain about where your roots are, as far as how you feel inside of of where your real interests are. And being Chinese is not something that it was my choice. I was born this way. So I was born Chinese, and I'm gonna die Chinese. This is not a choice. But when you have people that try to, when it comes to cultural appropriation, you have people that are not of a certain culture, and then they try to claim a culture in which to receive the benefits of that claim, but then they haven't put in the work to truly become a part of that culture. It's like a white person living as a black person for 30 years, opposed to just painting his face black and saying that he's black for Halloween. No, it's like you have to really be a part of that culture. Imagine living in, as a white or black person living in China for 30 years, 40 years. Well, look at my situation. A Chinese person living in America for 37 years. This is who I am. I am Chinese American. It's not my choice. I didn't choose to be born in America. I didn't choose to be Chinese. It's just who I am. So when it comes to people that have interests in other cultures, don't take it lightly that you can just pick and choose what you want to be, for this day or this week or this month. If you truly have interest in a certain culture, then commit your entire life towards the study of that culture. And then you might gain the respect from the people that are truly from that culture. So that's what I have to say about that. And hopefully helped you out a little bit, and hopefully some people learned little things from this video. And once again, I thank everybody for the support that they've given. I'm truly thankful, for everyone. Take care.